I'm Darren, and of course, I know most of the folks who've registered, but for those who haven't and who's going to listen on YouTube afterwards, I'm Darren Rees. I'm a wildlife artist and a Speyside Wildlife tour leader. I've been working for Speyside now since 1992. That's over 30 years, would you believe? Been to lots of wonderful places. Um, Been to South America and Latin America quite a few times now. Only been to Guyana once, and so we're going to talk about Guyana tonight. Um, so let's just get straight in. Oops, straight in there. Why isn't that playing then? I'm pressing the button. Ah, um, oh, there we go. So, yes, Ghana. A lot of people confuse it with Ghana, Ghana, in Africa, but Guyana, there it is. It's in the northeastern part of South America, and you can see there the equator running through and the Amazon basin. I'm hoping everybody can see my pointer. What's interesting to note about Guyana is you've got the Amazon basin on the southern perimeter of Guyana. And you've got these uplands, this huge uplift here running through Venezuela and the northern part of Brazil and into Guyana. And this is referred to the Guyana Shield, which gives Guyana a lot of endemics, which we'll talk about. So Guyana, it's about the size of the UK, just under the size of the UK, size of Britain, bigger than the size of the island of Britain. To give you a rough idea, then, so it's like 700 miles north to south, um, and about 150 miles wide, so something like that. Really unpopulated. They've got a population of only 800,000, would you believe? Um, and so it's very undeveloped. And as you can see from that satellite image on the right, it's blanketed with forest. 80% of the coverage of the land is primary rainforest. Um, and this is what it looks like. And this is a view from one of the viewpoints in Iroquois rainforest. And it just goes on forever, really. Um, and what's interesting is it's contiguous with the Amazon basin. So a lot of species that you'll find in the Amazon just blends with the Guyana's rainforest. But what it can offer is these uplands that are coming from the Guyana Shield. Of course, it gives the country its enormous mineral wealth, um, but it also gives it a huge diversity of species. In particular, with birds, I think it's listed as 47, but some books refer to it as 50 endemics. And it's really endemic to the Guyana Shield rather than Guyana, the country. But so these are found in parts of northern Brazil and parts of southeast Venezuela too. But this is just a sample. I thought, well, I could dig out 47 photographs of all these different birds. But you've got Cock of the Rock on the left. We'll talk about that later. These beautiful, beautiful toucans. This is Guyana toucanet at the top. And the two at the bottom, you got the streaked ant wren and the blood woodpecker. So lots and lots of endemics to go for, and it's the land of giants. There's giant anteaters, which I know some of you have seen before. Giant river otters. It's got the world's biggest rodent there, the capybara, and also the world's biggest freshwater fish, the arapaima, which actually, when we were there, we did see that just the backs of. There's actually a thriving game fishing industry now, fishing for these arapaimas. But I wanted to personalize it and just give you an insight to how I got to go to Guyana in the first place. And it was all because of this one bird and this one painting in particular. In 2000 and three, I was invited to join a group of artists, the Artists for Nature Foundation, and it was sponsored by the World Wildlife Fund. And we went to Ecuador and Peru, the Tumbes region. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. I was there as an artist, so we were doing lots and lots of painting. And at the very end of the trip, it finished up at Guayaquil. And Guayaquil was on the Ecuadorian coast. There's a big, big zoo there. And we were invited to go to the zoo, and I wanted to go and see the harpy eagles there. There's a really well-funded reintroduction program going on in Ecuador where they've got these harpy eagles and these huge aviaries. They're the size of like an aircraft hangar, and uh, um, and I was able to paint these beautiful harpy eagles. So it's a painting from life, if not from a wild bird. But why the connection with Guyana is that the project was largely on the Tumbes region in Ecuador, and this painting just was never used in the book. So I got it at home and I just put it in a folder. I never saw the light of day again until fast forward sort of to COVID and lockdown. And as some of you know, I got involved with Chris Packham's Self-Isolating Bird Club, the Facebook page and live broadcast he was doing during COVID. And I was painting birds and doing little art demos. And I was followed one episode by a young cameraman, Dan O'Neill, who had a piece on forest eagles. And they ended the piece with a plea for a fundraising thing for to raise funds for forest eagles. So I donated this painting to the like a live auction. Sadly, we didn't get any, but he wanted to buy it. So I then took it to the bird fair a couple of years later in 2023, and a woman come up to me, Claire Antal, I got to know over the years now. She came up to her, never met her before, and she wanted to buy it. I said, "Well, that's very kind of you." I said, "Please take it." I said, "I want you to give it to any donation to um, a Forest Eagle charity." And she said, "Well, I actually work with harpy eagles in Guyana," which was a lovely sort of full circle for me because within 2 weeks she'd invited me to go to Guyana. So I thought that was just an interesting sort of insight of how I come to go to Guyana. So I was invited to join a group of tourists, sorry, eco-tourist agents, and a group of journalists, and we were going to look at some of the burgeoning sort of ecotourism scene there in Guyana, and we were also looking at some of the conservation projects. You see that lovely photograph on the right. We were embedded with this charity in the south of Guyana. And I just remember that moment there. We were looking at the camera traps. You can see the photograph of the camera traps. And they were unloading the images from the night before or the last 2 nights. And we were just crowded around this woman. And Erin, her name is, she's from Ireland, funny enough, who heads up the project there. And there, an ocelot, there's a photograph of an ocelot walking by and a margay cat. And then there was this gasp when we were all gathered around when this huge, great jaguar walked across that camera trap there. So it was it was really lovely to be part of some of the communities there just for a whirlwind tour. And of course, we were staying in some of these new burgeoning eco lodges that are serviced by and led by they're community owned lodges. And once you move inland in Guyana, it's mostly all organized by the Amerindians, the local indigenous folk there. So it's really a lovely project to be involved with. And you can see there I'm sketching with some of the locals. That's Cecilia and Kerry there. They were drawing the capybara. That's my painting on the left of the capybara. And of course, I filled lots of sketchbooks with all these beautiful array of birds, the fork-tailed flycatchers up on the left and the marsh tyrants on the left. Top right, you've got the pearl kite, and some of these really interesting landscapes. I'll show you a photograph of that landscape a little bit later with all these termite mounds. Good habitat for anteaters and things. And there were toucans and caciques. And of course, there's some of the special birds that I really, really wanted to see, some of the endemics. And this was a sketch of the cock of the rock. I'll show you some photographs. But these are just little notes that I thought I'd give you an idea of the sort of personal connection from that one trip I've done to Guyana. So, of course, at the end of it, I was in the back of mind, I think we've got to bring a Speyside group out here and just do a bird watching trip. And so we linked up with the agents that were organising this fam trip, Wilderness Explorers, and we've hatched a plan. So you'll have to forgive the state of that map, but it gives you an idea of yeah, the mountains on the Brazilian and Venezuela border, the Guyana Shield, and the rest of the country. So let's launch into it then. So this is our itinerary for a Guyana holiday for Speyside Wildlife. We fly into Georgetown. Georgetown's the capital, and it's on the mouth of the Demerara River, which may give you an inkling of the colonial history of the place. Of course, it was a huge, great area for sugar production, the sugar plantations, and of course they were started as slave plantations, and a lot of African slaves were brought over, and there is actually a very Caribbean feel to Georgetown. Of course, now if you look at the population of Guyana, there's 30% from African heritage, 30% I think from Indian heritage, and a mixed heritage. So there's definitely a Caribbean feel to Georgetown and the coastal strip. And this is the hotel that we'll be using in Georgetown. This is the Cara Hotel, which loves to let everybody know that Prince Charles stayed there, and Jimmy Carter stayed there, and Mick Jagger, and all these people. Anybody who's been to Georgetown stays at the Cara Hotel. So come with us, and you'll stay at the Cara Hotel. We do have some time at Georgetown at the end, but for our itinerary, we just overnight at Georgetown and then get straight into some of these internal flights to get into the interior. And I love this photograph. So this was the Trans-Guyana Airways. And I don't know if anybody remembers the guy on the right. So I photographed the tailplane because they celebrate anybody famous that's been in Guyana. And this was Eddie Grant. And evidently he's from Guyana. He's Guyanese. There's only a few other famous folk I could find from Guyana. A couple of cricketers, Clive Lloyd and Lance Gibbs. So I was looking on other planes to see Clive Lloyd. But anyway, I found Eddie Grant. So we fly from Georgetown to probably the most spectacular geographical feature in Guyana is the Kaieteur Falls. That's 4 times the height of Niagara, so it's some impressive waterfall. If you actually go into Wikipedia, it says it's one of the largest single drop, but I don't know how you equate that. It's 700 foot high anyway, so it's a massive waterfall, and it's truly spectacular to get alongside and that roar. Now I know some of you, Jean from Guernsey, she was on I think Roy's trip to Pantanal, was it? And some of you have been at the Pantanal with Roy. And there's that phenomenon of the swifts coming into roost and going behind the waterfall, and you get the same thing here at Kaieteur. You've got white-chinned and band-rumped swifts chasing around, and they're picked off by these guys. These are orange-breasted falcons. So we'll be looking out for them. We have an evening there. We're just having one night there, but we'll have the evening at the falls looking for falcons and swifts and local birds. And I thought I'd bung this one because we were told that there was this endemic frog. This is a golden rocket frog. And I don't know if you can see my little pointer there. So it's this tiny little frog that's only lives in this particular plant. This is a giant tank bromeliad. So it's all these tiny little niches that nature's filling in the most obscure places. But of course, the big attraction for me is the cock of the rock. Look at this, and I've just got a tiny bit of video of cock of the rock there, and just splendid thing. I don't know if people have seen Andean cock of the rock. They're more scarlet. Um, this is Guyana cock of the rock, then it's more orangey, and it has that lovely black fringe along the crest, which is lacking on Andean. And Andean cock of the rock's got a black and white wing. So they're just the most luxuriant of birds. They're just beautiful to watch. They're quite a size too. They're the size of a jackdaw, but this sort of pulsating orange that's shining in the sort of gloom of under the canopy of these of the forest there. So that's certainly a target bird, a cock of the rock, and we'll be visiting them in the morning. So you see the footage there. It's not doing much really. It's just perched, but in the morning, hopefully, it might be good if we can see some action because they do this sort of lekking where the cocks gather around like the black cock, black grouse, and these will be dancing for the partners. So that's certainly a target bird. But then we leave Kaiter and go to our next destination. So I just thought I'd give you a little snippet. There's the waterfalls. And this will give you an indication of some of the modes of transport that we've got to do. Also, just gives you this completely different perspective of flying. As soon as you leave a settlement, you're over this virgin, pristine rainforest. So we're flying east then from Kaieteur, and we'll fly over the Iroquois rainforest to a small landing strip which serves Iroquois River Lodge. But I thought I'd just put these little clips in to give you an idea that we'll be going on some small little planes like this. So I came in on that first plane. This was the rest of the group coming in the second plane, and this is the Fairview airstrip, right in the middle of the rainforest there. And this airstrip serves Iroquois River Lodge, which is the sort of showcase lodge in the middle of Iroquois Forest Reserve. And I've got the statistics here. It's over 1 million acres that the Guyanese government have secured. And they've used it. It was originally a research center at the Iroquois River Lodge. And sorry, it's not the Iroquois River. The river is called the Essequibo. The Iroquois is the rainforest. But at the River Lodge there, then it was a research center. And the patron is was Prince Charles then, of course, King Charles. And they've invested a lot of money into how they can make this work as sustainable ecotourism. And it's a very modern build, the lodge, very comfortable rooms, nothing too fancy, don't expect sort of five-star luxury, but it's everything works and they're really comfortable and the people are just so friendly and so welcoming. So from Iroquois, we can explore different sort of perspectives on the forest. It's on the Essequibo River, and we'll go out on boat trips along the river. The Essequibo River is quite wide. We're in the dry season, so you get a lot of sandbars, and we'll be zigzagging our way around sandbars. These are large built turns, and maybe on some sandbars, we'll see some caimans, maybe a capybara, who knows? But there's lots of wildlife to be seen along the river itself. Kingfishers, lots of kingfishers, 4 different types of kingfishers to see. There's top right is the tiny one, the little South American pygmy kingfisher, and then you've got the bottom right is the big one, ringed kingfisher, which I know some of you have seen. Gene's seen in Texas. That one goes right up through Central America. It's a real big one. And then the one on the left is the Amazon kingfisher, which again is just in the Amazon basin. And the fourth one is green kingfisher, which is very similar. Sun grebes, they'll be pootling along the edge. Again, thanks Roy to this photograph. That's a lovely photograph. My photograph is very poor, but sun grebe again, widespread in the Amazon basin, not particularly endemic, but it's just one of the birds that we'll encounter along the river. Um, so as well as river trips from Iroquois, we'll work the forest, and there's some elevated viewpoints. This is Turtle Mountain, so it's about an hour's walk slowly through the forest to get to these not a clearing, sorry, a viewpoint. And it's perhaps in these sort of places that we can focus on some of these more trickier birds. Again, this is on the left. This is the endemic red Guyana red cotinga, and on the right, these strange-looking birds called capuchin birds. Um, Perhaps it'd be a good place to look at some of the other primates too. Capuchin monkey and red howler monkeys, because when you've got these elevated views, like you have at Turtle Mountain, you've got a chance of picking up birds of prey too, and other monkeys. But I always think sometimes that these lodges they're built in some of the clearings in the forest, and just to relax at the lodge with a orange juice or something stronger, a beer or something, and just watch the world go by. This was right in front of the lodge, one of these trees, these palm trees that was fruiting, and just watching these are painted parakeets. Um, and you could just watch the one tree. There was a woodpecker that flew in and started feeding on the same things. And there were these guys. I know you've all got your mutes, but I'm sure some of you are going, ah, oh, aren't they great? These are brown capuchin monkeys. Just a delight to watch. And this was in the same tree as the parrot. So I often think let the nature come to you, and you certainly can do that at the lodges in the rainforest there. While we're on the subject of mammals, then now I wouldn't. I ummed and ahed about putting this in. This was straight off the Iroquois River Lodge website, and they actually, if you look at the website, it'll say we go out jaguar spotting is one of the activities. Now, I know that Roy's Pantanal trip is famously, if you need to see a jaguar, that's the trip to go on. But there are jaguars there, Iroquois, and they are occasionally seen. I think, we've got a 50-50 chance. Who knows? But certainly, once I saw it was on their website, I thought, well, we've got to include it because we are having an early morning looking for these guys along the road that feeds into the lodge. More than likely, we may not see a jaguar, but we may see these. These are a lot more common. These are agoutis. These curious, curious little beasties, little rodents. And this is the main highway then. The main road that cuts south from Georgetown that goes all the way down to Brazil. If you wanted to drive to Manaus in Brazil, this is the main road, the main thoroughfare through the center of Guyana. And so when we transfer from Iwakramah River Lodge, we go along this road to the next lodge in the same rainforest, Iwakramah Rainforest. And we take our time going along this road. There's hardly any traffic, particularly early in the mornings. And well, you can see, I just thought I'd put that because that was birding along that same bit of road. And it's me just looking at the shapes, all these incredible shapes. This is a jacamar. Jacamar is not quite a kingfisher, but it's a similar sort of feel, that long bill. I think it's green. I don't know if it's green jacamar, I think. But we'll be working the road between Iwakrama and our next destination, which is Atta Rainforest Lodge. And of all the lodges I stayed, I think this was my favorite. It was a real joy to stay here, and it's again just carved out of a clearing in the forest with these huge, tall cecropias and kapok trees. Um, that was my little room, very comfortable. Everything works. Food was fantastic. This was the dining room again. It's run as a community run lodge, and the people are so proud well, it's their home, and they're so proud to share it. Really, really friendly folk and local guides. And the bird life just around the lodge in the clearing is just a delight. These are, you can think of these as forest turkeys, these sort of black and white turkeys. They're called curassows. These are black curassows, and this is another Guyanese endemic. Um, Huge birds and very sociable. They go around in little groups. And I just love that little crest on their heads with all the quiffs and the little fine white spots. They're really finely marked birds. And a lot of fun to draw too. I thought I'd squeeze some sketches into. So this was when I was there at Atta. And again, around the clearing, you can just take your time. If we've had an early morning, we'll come back before lunch and chill out and just bird watch around the clearing. And there are often macaws around the trees. This is blue and yellow macaw on the left and scarlet macaw on the right. Um, if we're lucky, this is a difficult bird to see. This is crimson fruit crow. But there's all manners of birds up in the trees here. There's spixes, guans, and various toucans and toucanettes. I've got this little bit of footage here that I took of, I think this is black collared Arasari with that improbable bill. It's just amazing. I mean, if you haven't been to any South America or Central American destination, the toucans are just some of my favorite birds to watch, and the Arasaris. The Arasaris are like a small toucan. Just a delight to watch. But the star or one of the highlights really at Atta is this canopy walkway. So it's quite an elaborate construction. Um, it's about, I guess the highest is nearly 100 foot off the ground, just less than 100 foot off the ground. You don't have to climb ladders to get up to it too. So there's a bit of a hill, and you walk up a series of steps up the hill. You can see on the right photograph, there's the platform, which is the sort of entrance to the canopy walkway. And then you go out across the canopy to these elevated platforms. And of course, you're right up there at the top story of the forest, the canopy level, as the name suggests. And it's this wonderful verdant sort of treescape unfolds. And yeah, we get macaws flying by and toucans calling. This is a red and blue macaw, I think. We may see some of the cotingas. There's spangled cotinga on the left. This is pompadour cotinga. Maybe see some trogons. This is white-tailed trogon. There may be some birds of prey. Certainly, we saw king vulture, the one on the left, a really big, large vulture. Not quite condor size, but they don't get condors there. So it's about the biggest thing you'll see flying around in Iraquama. And on the right, you have black caracara. But all the time, you're looking at all these interesting little birds. There's ant wrens and tanagers and the like, which really just sort of light up the tops of the trees. Sometimes it can be quieter than you imagine, but we'll aim to get up there in the morning, and it's really lively in the morning. So from Atta, then we transfer again along that road, and we go to Sarama. Now, I've never been to Sarama. That was not part of the itinerary when I went there on the fam trip there. But I really wanted to include Sarama. Again, it's one of these community-owned lodges, and these are photographs just off the website. You can see again the simplicity of the rooms, but they're absolutely clean and spotless, and everything works there. So from Surama, you can explore a little bit of a mosaic of habitats. There's a little bit of savanna and clearings there, but basically we're targeting one special bird then. So we'll go down these smaller rivers looking for this guy. Um, and this could well be a highlight for me because I've never seen like wild one. I mentioned the one I saw in a cage, but this is harpy eagle then. And just look at this one. This is Roy's photograph, and maybe Jean will tell us a bit later from the experience that they saw harpy eagle in the Amazon there. But just look at those talons. They're just incredible. And yeah, so it's a target species. There's a couple of nests in the Surama area. And so we're just keeping our fingers crossed that we'll be catching up with these guys. While I'm there, though, I'm looking at those talons. I'll go back to that painting I did, and just another little story, because as I said, it was in this huge, great aviary. The aviary was the size like of an aircraft hangar, but within this aircraft hangar-sized aviary, they had a small cage, which the keeper could go in and prepare the food and get access to the thing. And so I was allowed in this inner cage. And I was chatting to the keeper, and he thought, well, I'll leave this guy alone. He just wants to do some drawing. And his passing words to me was, "Do not go out of the cage. It may kill you," which is quite alarming thing to say to somebody. And I thought, really? And then he explained that the last keeper, these talons, the bird had grabbed a keeper around the stomach, and the talons got in and punctured some vital organs, and the guy died of internal bleeding. So, of course, I was then quite intimidated, and I've never been intimidated by a bird before in my life. So I was sketching this, and the keeper just left me on my own. He went out of the little cage and went elsewhere to do some work. And so I was left just watching this bird. And once this bird saw that I was on my own, I don't know if it was just being mischievous or what, but it dropped down from the cage and got something off the floor, and it was a dead cat. So it obviously a cat had got into that hangar, it had killed it, but it hadn't quite finished dispatching it. So with that, it landed on top of the cage that I was in, and it was only about 3 foot above me, and proceeded to starting to dissect this cat, and there were bits falling down, and I was having to sort of dive for cover because I didn't want to get covered in bits of cat. So yes, I've never been intimidated by a bird, but I certainly haven't been intimidated by a harpy eagle. So I'm hoping to see one for real. Anyway, so from Sarama and hopefully successful harpy eagle watching, we journey down further south to Karanambu. And Karanambu is this aerial shot. This is straight off their website. The aerial shot gives you an idea. It's starting to break up. The forest starts to break up in southern Guyana into a more savanna sort of open country. So you've got this mix here at Karanambu of remnant rainforest and the riverine sort of forest. You've got the river itself, which is the Rapanuni River, and then you've got the surrounding savanna. So it's a very diverse mixture of habitats to explore. And so Karanambu Lodge is quite well known in the natural history sort of world. This is a photograph of my room. Again, it's a great lodge to stay at. Very, very friendly. Again, it's community. Actually, it's not community owned. Sorry, it's owned by the McTurk family. And it was very well known. The owner, Diana McTurk, I think she sort of inherited it was a cattle ranch, her family owned, but she was an ardent conservationist and a naturalist. You can think of, I don't know, Diane Fossey and the gorillas, her relationship with gorillas in Africa, and Jane Goodall and chimpanzees. Well, Diane McTurk was well known in the natural history world for her work on giant otters. So much so that when David Attenborough in the late 50s and 60s was doing his Zoo Quest thing, first book, and then he brought this film crew out in the 60s, David Attenborough stayed at Karanambu and Gerald Durrell did. And now it's been passed down, so the diameter is long gone, but her daughter Melanie runs the place, and it's a wonderful place to explore. So these are the boats. This was I was in another boat, looking back to the other boat with our group. We were going along the river, and we found the well-studied giant otters. So let's give you a little bit of a. So this is a dodgy bit of video from my looking down my telescope, handheld in a boat. And I don't know whether they're not as pretty as our otters, are they? They're quite sort of spooky looking, I think. There's something crazy about them. But you see that those huge, great webbed feet. And they're big animals. They're 6 foot long, and they can hunt in packs too. Some of the locals refer to them as river wolves, and they can take most of their diet is 80% is fish, of course, but they will take other stuff, and they've been known to take capybara and anaconda and caiman and things. So they're quite a formidable animal. But hopefully we'll see them, and we'll keep our feet out of the water. So at Karanamba, then there's a very different habitats to explore, and we'll go up some of these quiet backwaters into these lagoons and creeks in the evening, and they have the giant water lilies, the Victoria amazonicus, the biggest water lily there. And of course, where you've got water lilies, you've got lily trotters or the jacanas, the wattled jacana on the right. That's a young bird, and that's a purple gallinule on the left. And there'll be all manner of other water birds. This is a lovely shot that Roy let me. This is a sunbitten, and there'll be a whole host of herons and egrets and marsh tyrants and birds of the backwaters. Also, we'll spend an evening out with lamps at the airstrip there at Karanambu in the evening. You get this curious bird on the left is like our stonecrawler. It's a thickney. This is striped thickney. And there's something like 7 species of nightjars to look at. The one on the right, I think, is white-tailed nightjar, but there's lots of different birds to see at night there. So we'll certainly have some nocturnal activities. And we'll get out in the morning to look for these guys. So out in the savannah, the grasslands, there's a population of these giant anteaters, and they are. Well, I remember the first time I saw one, I just couldn't believe that. What I wondered what I was looking at. I thought, what is that tail doing? It's huge and it's very stiff. Got a tiny little bit of footage here. This is another one we saw, and I wondered what was going on. And of course, I clocked that it was carrying a young animal on its back. So yeah, hopefully we'll see these. They're pretty nocturnal, but first thing in the morning, there's still a chance of seeing them. And there's a couple of little doodles I did when I was there. So once we are in that sort of savannah area, there's areas that are still maybe still flooded and damp, or there's drier areas, and there's a bit more of easier bird watching actually, because birds are out in the open. This is buff-necked ibis. The big one on the right is Jabiru. You can think of it similar to a marabou stork in Africa. This is Jabiru. And quite a good area for birds of prey too. This is Aplomado falcon on the left, and black collared hawk on the right. And this was curious. This photograph. This is savannah hawk on the left. Doesn't really do it justice because there's a little bit of like smoke in the background, and some of the savannah areas down there are grazed for cattle, and they do regular burnings to get the grass the right height for the cattle grazing. Of course, when they set fire to some of the grasses, all the little critters get moved ahead of the fire, and there was this row of savannah hawks right on the edge of the leading edge of the fire, just picking out small animals that were flushed out by the fire. So yeah, that's savannah hawk on the left. So right in the south, then we then move to our final stop at Manari, and this lovely guest house in the south, not far from the Brazilian border, where we can explore this different landscapes again. So these are some of these savanna landscapes around Manari with the termite mounds. Again, an area we've seen anteater. Just a different sort of feel to the landscape down there. But there's also some small rivers that have a number of endemics, these Guyanese endemics. So this is sun parakeet. So we're going to have an excursion for a morning to try and see sun parakeet, which is you can see how attractive they are, and they were collected for the cage bird trade and very much endangered now. But this is a Guyanese endemic. So we'll have a morning looking for them. And there's also some of these curious endemics. This is hoary-throated spine-tail on the left. And the little black bird is an ant wren. It's called a Rio Branco ant wren. Again, we'll have a morning looking for these, but there'll be a whole host of birds along the rivers too to catch up on. So we'll say goodbye to the southern savannas. That's a nice sort of feel of the landscapes down there. And we'll return on our flight from Lethem, which is on the Brazilian border. We'll return to Georgetown. So we have 2 nights at the end of the trip to explore Georgetown and the coastal strip. We go to a place to the Mahika River, and we'll have a boat trip in the backwaters of the Mahika River, which again is just a wealth of water birds. These curious, one on the left, the boat-billed heron, and the one on the right is capped heron. It's very rich for all these water birds. There's tiger heron on the left. This is rufescent tiger heron. It's lovely, rich coloring. And this one's an endemic on the right. This is a Guyanese endemic. This is rufous crab hawk. We may see it at Mahika, and we may see it at the Demerara River. But perhaps this will be our target bird. And I think these are just crazy looking. This is Hoatzin, which I'm guessing if you've been to the Amazon, you've seen this, Gene, and folks who've been elsewhere in the Amazon. It's an Amazon basin specialist, but it is found right across the Amazon basin. I saw my first Hoatzins in Ecuador, so right over there in the far west of the Amazon basin, all throughout. And it's rather curious that Guyana has so many endemics, but this is actually the bird they chose for their national bird, the Hoatzin, which is well, you can see why. They're just so full of character. They've got these tiny little hooks on their wings, and which the young use to clamber around the foliage in the trees when they're pretty helpless and they can't fly. But they look well, they're kind of almost a missing link from Archaeopteryx and a chicken, aren't they? Really bizarre. And they smell a bit. The locals call them stink birds. Um, but they're real characters. I'm looking forward to seeing these again, Hoatzins. And you can see these are drawings from Ecuador, I think. Um, when I saw Hoatzins for the first time. And the drawings on the right, you might recognize that big ibis that's rather scarlet colored. So we'll go for our last evening. We'll go for a river cruise from Georgetown along the Essequibo River, then the biggest river. And there are massive roosts of scarlet ibis there, along with all the egrets. That was a doodle that I did when I was there. I thought just the egret, you can squint your eyes and you can imagine they're egrets, can't you? And the blobs of scarlet. And there's a little snail kite over there. And in the evening, then we'll just watch these and have a little cocktail and watch the scarlet ibises from our boat. So there you go. That will be the lovely way to end our holiday, I think, in Georgetown. And yeah, I hope that you'll join us. So hope to see you there.